Let's start with a little introduction. We are moving faster than ever, and AI agents are all over the place. Automation has never been easier amongst the space. Companies are laying off staff to experiment with agents. We are seeing other agents trying to fulfill the need for people who understand the topic and are capable of implementing it within the space. We are seeing people quitting jobs to become solopreneurs, building their own AI agent empire, let's say. So I am honored to sit amongst such experts and talk a little on the topic. So let's begin with our first question. And it's to Daniela. From your vantage point, from your vantage point in banking and AI, can you tell us how do you view AI agents and how do they relate to LLMs? And of course, how is banking currently benefiting agents?
Yes, of course, right. So agents are not something new. If you look at a very famous book which was issued in 1995, there is already a definition of agents, but they were not popular in the AI world and especially in the business. But the rise of LLM made them possible and also made them needed. So with LLMs, we get a reactive behavior. So we send a request, we get a response. But then what we need in financial institution and in any other enterprise or even smaller businesses is a more proactive behavior. And this is what the agents are giving us. They are giving us a way to make them autonomously working, thinking, using our already established infrastructure and services, and even store information and have kind of memory like humans do. So in financial institutions and any other business, of course, they will be the future for sure, because they will provide us the needed gap for additional automation of manual processes, and also they will help us in coding and all other stuff that is happening in banks and even in software companies.
Great, thank you very much. Titus, from your point of view, from your perspective working with customers in AI, how much awareness is there and how much demand is for AI agents at the moment?
So I think everyone building in any kind of technology space right now wants to implement some form of AI in their business. I think there's a lot of conversation happening around fully autonomous, 100% automation. I think that's generally a wrong initial approach. People who will be the most successful in our space will be the ones who will learn how to augment themselves and how to augment their teams with AI and not go fully autonomous immediately. We saw some of those initial lessons in crypto agents version 1, where we had those like X bots and all these like autonomous trading tools. They work if you have some expertise behind, but then more often than not, their errors tend to compound if they're left unchecked. So I think we need to educate both ourselves and like the people we work with in the space to understand like what kind of guardrails we need to put in place, what kind of controls. And the way I tend to think about AI agents is like it's more an extension of my own capabilities and my team's capabilities or the client's team's capabilities as almost like an Iron Man suit as opposed to a fully autonomous like R2-D2 or C3PO robot, if you want to kind of have the movie analogy.
Great, thank you. And Ivo, would you say that the hype that has been around for a while related to crypto agents is something that can finally be justified? And how important are agents in this regards?
So yeah, that's a fantastic question. So first of all, you have to keep in mind that AI plus blockchain has been something sort of promoted and hyped since 2017, but mostly it has always been vaporware, and it has never really made sense because AI and blockchain are fundamentally like almost opposites, right? Because AI can never run on blockchain. And this was never the right mental model to begin with. So blockchain has really limited computational capacity, and AI is all about having as much computational capacity as possible. So it sounds like they don't make sense together, but in reality, what ended up happening is that AI agents are finally the thing that makes AI plus blockchain make sense. Why? Exactly because they're opposites. Because blockchain basically can put in the guardrails to LLMs, because LLMs are very non-deterministic, they're probabilistic, so they're kind of random systems, they're unpredictable, and they also hallucinate a lot. So if you want to put them to use for financial applications, which also sounds like it makes a lot of sense because they can make autonomous decisions, but if you want to make them make financial decisions, you need to put in guardrails, which only blockchain can really do, because you can write a smart contract which puts in some set of rules on what the AI agent can and cannot do, and then you can feel safe about giving an LLM control over to some funds or some important operation. Because as I said, LLMs hallucinate, they're not perfect, they're probabilistic, so you sometimes cannot predict their output, sometimes they would just give you like incorrect stuff. So putting those guardrails on chain finally makes AI plus blockchain make sense. So it's sort of like an yin and yang thing, where one is the security and the other one is the creativity. So one is like deeply grounded, which is the smart contract, the blockchain, and the other one is creative, or like has some interesting outputs. So yeah, I think the hype finally, after all these years, makes sense.
So we should be happy that we are in this space then.
Absolutely.
Okay, Titus, let's expand on this topic. From your experience, what needs to happen for agents to go beyond this early adoption phase? Is it about lowering complexity? Is it about better tooling? Is it about building trust? Or is it something else?
I think it's all of the above, and I think I would start with better tooling, because that then gives you the leverage to implement more use cases, experiment with more scenarios, more workflows, more toolkits, and then that builds that trust that you need to essentially scale and give it more autonomy. I think we're also getting to a point where guardrails become interesting. As Ivo said, you can independently verify those if they're coded inside the smart contract and there's proof on-chain in metadata, for example, that the execution actually happened. And now with payment infrastructure as well being set up with X402 and then with AP2, two new protocols, well, relatively new protocols, but in this space, if anything that's less than a year old is considered new. With those, I think there's more ways to create autonomy within a verifiable space, because what you want to do is you want to check whether an agent actually made a payment before releasing certain like data or reward or allowing to enter a certain space or like clearing a trade, for example. But you can do that now autonomously if you look on chain for a transaction specifically tied to that action, right, with the X402 protocol. And I think that's where we're building that muscle to understand how can we do first 10 of these, first 1,000 of these, first 100,000 of these, and then millions of transactions. And then that essentially adds a layer of agentic AI to, right now, one of the biggest use cases for crypto, which is DeFi.
Yes. Daniela, do you want to add something to the topic?
Yes, I can basically make a slight transition and taking the tooling as a keyword that Tito mentioned, and make it a bit broader. It's infrastructure and architecture. So for now, we had these microservices, monoliths, and event-based systems, and many more, but we didn't have agentic infrastructures. And in general, our infrastructures are not ready for that in order to adopt those systems. Of course, we can implement very easily, even with a no-code to an agent, but how that would work in production, we don't know. Because even the big players like Google and Azure, even they are not prepared with the right tooling for agents in terms of security, in terms of tool registries, agent communication, especially data protection, and so on. So this is something that is about to come. It's something that even the big players and banks and all other institutions are on their way, but we are still not there.
I don't have much to add, but it's worth noting here that we needed an introduction on what agents are in the first place. And basically, I would personally define agents as like a system where an LLM interacts with the outside world and has some sort of a set of rules or a framework where it can loop. This is the most important thing about an agent. It can take stuff from the environment, analyze stuff from the environment, then affect the environment, and then continue operating on this loop of learning how it affected the environment in some way. So,
reasoning.
Yeah, this is, well, you could argue that it's not reasoning, it's just like interaction, like your senses, like your eyes, your ears, etc. But what I want to remind everyone for the context of this conversation is that ChatGPT itself is an agent. It's no longer just an LLM. Like the very early versions, I think they were almost LLMs or no, they were still kind of agents because when you type something in ChatGPT, it actually, you don't see the entire response. Part of the response is its memory. And then the next time you type something into ChatGPT, it sends the LLM the whole memory of the entire conversation that you have and the things that it was supposed to remember. So it's already a loop. And now, in these days, it also searches Google, searches the internet, etc. So it's literally an agent by this point. And a true agent, like even more agentic than that, would be something that interacts with the blockchain or something that interacts with the world in general, and it can create an account for you or whatever. But my point here is that okay, we're not that far ahead in terms of infrastructure, but a lot of it...
Not ready also, yes.
Not really, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff already built. And there's a lot, you can already get quite far ahead with the existing stuff we have.
The biggest challenge is actually that you are absolutely right. We are much ahead in terms of development of agents, but not the infrastructure. And there is this gap between many teams are implementing agentic systems. Many companies, even small companies, startups are implementing agentic systems, but the whole infrastructure is not matured yet. And that's the biggest challenge. And something that we also discussed, maybe you will touch it, but I'll just make a point on it, is this knowledge gap of teams, where everyone thinks he understands AI and agents and everything, but people are still not that far in terms of training and knowledge and experience.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I wanted to go back to like the infrastructure gap. I think it's very tied to the knowledge gap, and I think there's a lot of infrastructure for developers out there, right? For people who understand the technical underlyings of how you need to execute a autonomous system, be it like service inside of your organization. There's well-known like IAM, RBAC for that. You can apply a lot of that to agentic AI. I mean, in a sense, it's still a program. It still can function as a service account. But the gap between like a developer deploying an agent inside an organization and a non-developer and people who are not as technical deploying agents in organizations is closing, and that's actually why we launched Nexus when we did yesterday, is to give more people power with less technical capabilities to be able to have that access inside the organization. Because again, coming back to the Iron Man suit analogy that I did earlier, if you're able to embody the agent with the access that you have inside an organization, like be it you're a sales representative, be it you're a marketing executive, you're an operations person, you have access to certain data and certain accounts, and as long as you operate within that guardrail and the agent operates within that guardrail, then you can do a lot more work faster with the added intelligence capacity that the LLM brings in. Because, and coming back to Ivo's conversation around ChatGPT and how it was initially a closed LLM, it started becoming an agent when it got access to the web, and then it started getting access to tooling. But now I think the question is like, how do we get it outside of the IT circle of fear and more into, hey, now we're creating a distrusted execution environment where we can operate with our own data like we do day to day in our work environment. Because as employees, we have access to data to do our work, right? And then the same way, now we bring this LLM, be it like an in-house one, or if you're using a third-party one, you can add that layer of intelligence to your day-to-day work.
Great. So let's park our discussion for a second. I want to ask our audience, how many of you guys have actually built an AI agent yourself? Raise your hand. Okay, we have like at least 10 people. Great, great.
Maybe we can also ask how many of you would like to do agents?
Yes.
Not that many.
So we already identified one gap, which is the knowledge gap. Considering that agents hallucinate, governance is tricky, security is mandatory, is there something else which we can define as a hard truth that we learned from phase one? Something more to add to that?
I think demos are fun and production is hard. I think that's a super hardcore fact that everybody who's doing AI learns. And then the other one, I think in my experience is you need initially to be the human in the loop when it comes to deploying your first few agents until you learn how to operate with it and what it can or cannot do. And then the other one, I would say, if you're trying to automate something you don't understand very well, then you're going to fail.
Okay, yeah,
I think Tito already mentioned it in his previous comment. Like, we identified the knowledge gap, but he mentioned something much more important also, that challenge is to enable people to use that. I mean, the enablers are pretty much the people that need to make it easy and straightforward in order to spread it and make it useful. And that's why many companies right now are failing with doing that, because there is a need of key people that are able to enable other people to do that job. So. And another challenge, of course, is security that we need to deal with, because we're talking about financial institutions here. So security, auditing, banking regulations are key requirements, and they need to somehow fit in that picture.
So I'm not sure if those are hard truths, but I would like to give some advice to everyone who aspires to build an AI agent, and it's kind of a hard truth, but it's don't get fixated on doing everything through an LLM. Like, sometimes an old-fashioned if-else is best, and when talking about agentic systems, they're this composition of multiple components. So in an agentic system, sometimes you can have multiple LLMs interacting with each other. Sometimes you can have an LLM and some check, some verification, a smart contract, whatever. But my point is, don't get fixated on running every single thing through the LLM. And some things are really a simple traditional code can do them better. Like, for example, an LLM cannot beat a chess algorithm at chess. This is something that everyone needs to keep in mind all the time. So sometimes an if-else or just an algorithm is better, and make sure to compose the system in a way that takes the best advantage of every specific thing for the specific goal, and don't overuse the LLM.
I think Ivo's statement is really valid in terms of don't use for everything LLM, and it's absolutely valid also for our agents. And sometimes it's enough to use an LLM for something small instead of building a whole agent. A simple example would be, we all know there are already existing business processes which are automated. So simple steps might be just candidates for an LLM. Later on, it could also be transformed into an agent, but starting small is much safer than just going to these complex agentic systems.
I have a bit of a contrarian approach on that end. Sometimes I found that it's better to use the agentic approach and the LLM to find the patterns in the thing that you're trying to automate. And then from those, let's say you find that 30%, 40%, 90% of that can be turned into something of a mechanical approach. And the best example I can give for that is data scraping. Initially, you don't know what you're scraping. You need to find structure in that website, for example. You strip the HTML, you find the objects in there, and then at some point you realize there's enough repeatability because the website won't change as much, so that you can build a mechanical extractor, and that's incredibly more efficient, both from a time and from a cost perspective. Because let's not forget, AI agents are very expensive at scale. Those old tokens, all the compute, all the memory that you need to use is not trivial. Whereas a mechanical approach usually means that your cost will be 10, 100, or 1,000 times less. But to get there, I tend to appreciate the help of the LLM to analyze that data and get there faster, right? Find the patterns, automate, and then use the agent on like new fuzzy things that I want to discover.
Okay, I have a question regarding that. Do you think that this will make us too dependent on AI going forward? I'm talking about my perspective from my own experience. The more I use AI to advise me what to do, the more dependent I become, the less I think myself, and then there is a moment that happens, and I need to start thinking myself and making decisions myself and not rely on LLM to make the decision for me? Or do you have a filter, like you use the AI to suggest some actions and then you filter them out and consider what's the best approach?
I mean, I read about this, I think, just yesterday. There was an example of if you outsource your thinking to AI completely, then you miss the ability to understand your process, and you discount your own expertise in that field. And I think if you want to get great results from an agentic system, you need to do it in an area where you have some expertise, because you won't be able to tell the good answers from the bad answers if you don't really have expertise in the field. And like with programming, if you're not an experienced developer in a specific environment, you don't really know what's a good code, what's bad code, what's the security risk, what is a good component, a bad component, an efficient use of use effect in JavaScript or an inefficient one. Why is my code crashing if I have more than 10 users on my application at the same time, right? So those are, I think, the things that I think about when becoming dependent on LLMs or not. I think we already are, to an extent. In the same way we're dependent on the internet or on our phones or on our day-to-day use of electricity. So in a way, it adds to the stack of things that we have to improve our lives, be it work or home.
Great, thank you for that answer. Ivo, so looking...
Can I interrupt? I have a hot take about this.
Yes.
So the thing is, yes, AI makes people lazy, all right? And some people tend to stop thinking, but is it really that much different than Google before? And is it really that much different than like looking up Quora or Reddit or whatever like user-generated answer is to something? I think it's not that different. Yeah, it makes people a little bit lazier, but in reality it's just an extension to what we had before. And especially with coding you can see this, because even before Claude we had Copilot, and before that we had autocomplete. And some autocompletes were pretty smart. So like coding these days is just a little bit more of that. You still need to think, you still need to apply like human engineering and like this mentality of doing things the correct way. It's just a little bit like more automated.
Very interesting take. Yeah, thank you. Then let's proceed to that question.
Yeah.
Looking at what we've learned so far, what do you think is the glue that will carry us from phase 1 to phase 2? And what bridges need to be built for agents to truly deliver?
Fantastic question. And I'm going to introduce a shameless plug a little bit later, but let's start with this. What do we have right now when it comes to AI agents and Web3? What do we have in terms of this intersection? I would argue that we don't really have anything. So almost all of the systems that exist are really rudimentary, and they're just a wrapper around ChatGPT often, or a wrapper around another LLM, and they're always prompt-induced systems where the user has to chat with the LLM in order to get some results. I think the next step would be promptless agents that work in favor of the user. So this is something that we are building at ADEX. And we're building an AI agent framework for basically for your wallet. And this is something that we are going to integrate with Ambire. So the vision there is that the user would simply enable this agent once, and this agent would work in the background to claim airdrops, to like invest on your behalf safely, to like optimize your portfolio. Like if you have stable coins lying around, it will put them in Aave or wherever the highest yield generation is. But I think this is the big step from stage 1 to stage 2, getting not exactly rid of prompts, but building systems that don't actually require prompts to work. Because let's face it, prompts are kind of, we're already bored of them. Like we all know ChatGPT, we all know it's useful, but we just use it as another Google, or sometimes we use it for deeper research, but it's not what we think as an agent. I said it's an agent, technically it's an agent, but it's not the future. It's not like something that works in the background on your behalf and actually delivers value to you without you even knowing.
Basically, this is exactly what agents by definition are. They're perceiving the environment. They're not waiting for someone to prompt them.
Exactly. Even though ChatGPT is an agent, because it still perceives the environment, but it does this after you prompt it. So it's like a mini agent and a short-lived agent. A real agent would operate all the time autonomously on your behalf.
I think I have, again, a contrarian approach to that. I think prompting should be boring in the same way investing should be boring for most people, because it produces a predictable result. And I think we need to have a lot of prompting that is super boring but does the job. And I think we need to have also these autonomous agents that go at the cutting edge and operate autonomously and bring us value. Because ultimately, also if you think about prompt, if you give a prompt that needs a longer running cycle, that's almost like you're spinning up a temporary agent. And I think we need to get used to working with these temporary agents more and more and giving it more and more trust to get to that point where you have there's enough habit or history learned that now the agentic system knows me or knows my goals well enough, or has borrowed from my goals enough so that the result is compelling, right? For example, ChatGPT, it has history from 2022 for me. It hasn't been that long. So I've been using it for many years. And right now when I ask it like, hey, help me write this article with these topics in my style, that's all I need to say, because it has enough memory of me and my goals to understand like how long does it need to spend thinking on that topic, gather information, and what kind of information I want, how do I want it to cite for me in the same way it can do for other tasks, like gather data, perceive the environment in some way, gather information to get me, for example, in an autonomous vehicle use case from point A to point B without crashing or stalling or getting blocked.
I think you both guys can meet in the middle, because there are also systems which are with prompts, but they are optimized prompts like prompt engineering, fine-tuning, and so on. So they're very much systems like, right now they have a predefined set of prompts which are used behind the scenes and simulate kind of autonomous or fully autonomous behavior, but still based on prompts. So that's a step between you and between you in terms of agentic systems.
Yeah, by the way, don't get me wrong, I'm not against prompts. What I'm saying is that the question was how do we get from stage 1 to stage 2? And prompts work, and they will continue to work. What I'm saying is that stage 2 maybe involves less prompting and more automation.
Yeah, and maybe more behind-the-scenes management of that prompt. I agree. And then we have MCP, the Model Context Protocol, that's helping like standardize how we bring data into context in the same way like prompts can be standardized with system prompts, with developer prompts behind the scenes. So the user doesn't have to spend hours building the perfect prompt, but it expresses an intention and then gets the result.
Yeah, which is, by the way, super agentic, but short-lived.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so we are running a bit out of time. Let's go to our last question, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions from the audience. If we're sitting here again in 10 years, it's not that long. What headline about AI agents do you hope we'll be discussing? Or put differently, are agents going to change the world in a similar way to how the internet did?
I think it already started. In 10 years, I think we're going to have companies, 10 times or 100 times more companies with the same amount of people doing work at a scale we can't even imagine from a data perspective, because we now have access to almost like perfect inference, perfect intelligence, combined with total data. We can do, we can solve much more problems at scale. I think that's a super high level definition. And I think we'll have an AI agent panel at that point. with us, on top of us.
You know, I'm in that IT business for more than 20 years, and during the last maybe 5 years, I'm constantly asking myself the question, how is that possible that nothing changed over the last 20 years? And suddenly it happens. So now things are changing, and the only thing I can tell, definitely yes. And I would allow myself to state Huang's, the CEO of NVIDIA, statement on his presentation. Yes, LLMs and agents are the next industrial revolution. Definitely yes.
I'm not sure we're going to be speaking about AI agents in 10 years. Let me explain. So once a technology becomes successful, it becomes so embedded in our toolbox that we forget it exists. Like, are we talking about React frameworks? We're not. Obviously, at a React conference, they would be, but we are at a Web3 conference, and we are talking about AI agents, and everyone is talking about AI agents at any conference. So I think that once a technology proves itself enough, it starts getting taken for granted, and it's something that exists. People work on it, people develop it, but it's no longer like this magic. So I think in 10 years, AI agents are going to be there, and we're no longer going to be discussing them as agentic systems. Because in reality, if you drop the LLM, if you forget about LLMs, agentic systems already exist. Like Google has a scraper. It's even machine learning powered. And it's always existed, like for the last 20 years. Amazon also. So all of those big companies are really complicated, automated systems, and no one is talking about the machine learning behind them. People were when Google was hot, when it was emerging, but they're no longer discussing this. So I think it's kind of, as much it is a revolution, it's also that much of an evolution.
Nobody mentioned AGI. Why? If I have to say like a title for a panel in 10 years, it will be something like AGI is here, what's next? What do you think, will we have AGI by 10 years?
If you've ever tried to integrate multiple data sources in a single context for LLMs, you know how far AGI is from us. Like, as long as we still have to handle auth tokens, refreshes, and then connect data systems and do matching tables between data structures, or at least put an LLM to do that, we still have a long way to do before any AGI comes to market.
I'm really afraid, it's not directly related to the topic, but what I'm afraid that right now we are discussing how to make agents smarter, and I really hope that in 10 years we will not be discussing how to make people smarter because of AI agents. So we need to be careful.
No comment on AGI. Maybe it already exists. But okay, anyway, I really agree with Titus because if you've ever really tried to build something with an LLM, you will hit the limits really, really quickly. Like if you try to do something more complicated than something that someone has already done, if you try to innovate, you will see very quickly how dumb this system actually is. And you will realize like how difficult it is and why it's so valuable and why billion-dollar companies get created in that way to actually make an LLM appear smart. So you will realize that ChatGPT is a marvel of engineering, not only the LLM behind it, but also the system that it is. And you will realize how difficult it is to make this system appear as smart as it appears in the big products like ChatGPT. So I don't want to say whether we're far from AGI or not, because the current system is really dumb in comparison to like full human intelligence. But in many ways, like the smoke and mirrors illusion is working. And in reality, when you think about the brain is actually like arguably a deterministic system, but it's a physical system and biological system that should be replicatable in theory. So why not?
Okay, thank you for the insightful discussion, guys. Glad to be amongst you here.
Thank you for the moderation.
Thank you.